Hi everyone, this is John Daly. I'm here again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How's it going today, Bernie?
So far, so good, John. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. So today we're going to talk about a few different topics. The first one is Tucker Carlson being fired from Fox News. Now, both of us have already written about this a bit, but a little more on this story has come out since then.
Right.
Specifically, some comments Tucker made about upper management at Fox. These were found when Dominion Voting Systems was doing their discovery phase for their lawsuit. Bernie, would you like to go ahead and describe what was found?
Yeah, there was some emails and texts that came out in discovery in the defamation suit that were not complimentary of management. And I'm guessing Rupert Murdoch decided I've had enough of this. There's a thing with some anchors. I've worked with a number of anchors, Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, Bryant Gumbel. I'm not talking about any of them necessarily, maybe, but not necessarily. There's a thing that goes on with some anchors where they think they're bigger than the company that they work for. And I think in Tucker Carlson's case, I think he got fired because Rupert Murdoch decided that Carlson figured he was bigger than Fox. And Rupert Murdoch said nobody is bigger than Fox. Fox is the star. Rupert Tucker Carlson or any of the others aren't the star. What's especially interesting about this, and by the way, this is not unusual among anchors. They think that because they're the ones on camera, that they're in charge of everything. Some of them do, not all of them. And I think Tucker Carlson may have been one of them. But what I find especially interesting, and I've talked about this before, Tucker Carlson had over about 3 million, 3.5 million viewers. Okay. There are about 330 million people in the United States of America. That means when Tucker Carlson was on television, 99% of the people in the United States were doing something else other than watching Tucker Carlson. Yet somehow he thought he was bigger than he really was. And I think that's what bit him in the rear end ultimately. And I think that's what ultimately got him fired. Now, there was also a lawsuit pending by a former producer who said it was a hostile work environment involving sexist language and things like that. That's a problem in corporate America that they don't want to have to deal with. And if you get rid of the person who's the accused, whether he's guilty or not is another matter. But if you get rid of that person, you get rid of a problem to some extent. So I think Tucker Carlson was done in mainly by Tucker Carlson.
No, I think that's true. I think, this feels like to me like it was a combination of things and that this was sort of the last straw. Carlson was for a long time throughout totally irresponsible conspiracy theories and got a lot of blowback from that, a lot of blowback from for his dishonesty. This isn't talked about a whole lot, but Fox actually, he's very highly rated for the network, but he lost a lot of ad revenue. Fox did for
Mhm.
companies that didn't want to be associated with Tucker's brand. That's why when people turned on his show, so often you'd see the My Pillow ads because that's one guy who was gonna Mike Lindell who was gonna stay with Tucker no matter what. But then came the lawsuit and this other lawsuit, and it feels to me like Murdoch finally just said enough's enough. This guy is just not worth it anymore.
Right. And this leads to going forward. Is Fox going to learn anything from this? Well, they're obviously going to learn that you don't have your employees put down certain comments in writing. Okay. And that's been a rule of thumb in broadcasting and corporate America for 1,000 years. But that's been reinforced at Fox. But the real question for me is, will they change their ways? And the single most important question is, will they continue to play up the news its audience wants to hear and play down the news its audience doesn't want to hear? Because that was the central point in the defamation suit, that Fox was doing these things, putting on information that they did not believe to be true because they thought their audience wanted that kind of information. So will they continue doing that? I think they will. I think nothing will change in that regard. I think they will continue pandering to the audience because that's where the money is. Some bright person once said, the answer to all questions involving the media is money.
Right. And I think, yeah, it will be interesting to see. I mean, Tucker was just one, and we've both talked about this. Tucker was just one part of the component, one part of the story. Susan Scott, all these other people at Fox, other hosts, they were doing a lot of the same things that Tucker was doing, and so far they still have their jobs. So it'll be interesting. What I have been thinking about is, whoever ends up replacing Tucker. I think a lot of people were sort of surprised at the time that when Bill O'Reilly, when he was fired, that Tucker came back and basically kind of matched his ratings. There was a little bit of a transitional period in between there. I think people had to get a little bit used to Tucker, but he found a way to sort of get about the same ratings as Bill did. You wonder if it's really if Tucker was really that special, or if anybody with charisma that they put into that particular time slot is going to do well. Do you have any guesses on who you think it might be?
Well, first, I have a guess, and I don't think whoever it is going to do as well in terms of ratings. And what if Tucker Carlson, and this is not crazy, what if Tucker Carlson winds up doing the 8 o'clock show on Newsmax? There will be a lot of people who normally watch Fox who will start to watch Newsmax. What I learned over the years is that people don't have really a loyalty to Fox. They had a loyalty to Donald Trump, and they didn't like it when they only liked Fox when Fox kissed up to Donald Trump. They like Tucker, some people, more than they like Fox. So if Tucker goes someplace else, they will go someplace else. That's something that I think Rupert Murdoch figured could happen and was willing to take a chance on precisely that happening.
And do you have a guess on who you think might take over that time slot?
No, but there's a rule in broadcasting. You don't want to replace an icon. You want to replace the person who replaces the icon. So you don't want to replace Walter Cronkite, although Dan Rather certainly did want to replace Walter Cronkite. And not a good example, because Dan Rather did better replacing Walter Cronkite than the person who replaced Dan Rather. But there's still a general rule of thumb. You don't want to replace somebody who's been very successful. You want to replace the person who replaces that person. So whoever comes in to replace Tucker Carlson, I don't think is going to do as well in terms of ratings. I just don't. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that Fox had to consider and was willing to live with, actually.
Yeah, it could be.
I've skirted your question twice because I don't have a name. I'll tell you this. There's one person on Fox who's very popular and who is appalling, and that's Jesse Waters. You knew I was going to say that, right? I could
Yeah,
see
you
him,
mentioned a little bit in the Q&A.
I
Yeah.
could see him moving from 7 to 8, or starting at 7 and going from 7 all the way to 9. Listen, in cable at Fox, they don't pick people who are the best journalists, who are the smartest people with the most intelligent analysis. They pick people who the audience likes, and the Fox audience likes people like Tucker Carlson and Jesse Waters. And if I had to pick somebody, I'd pick him, okay? And I will never forgive Bill O'Reilly for elevating that schmo to the status that he's achieved.
Oh, I don't blame you for that. He's pretty rough, but definitely popular with today's Fox News audience. So, changing gears, also since last we talked, some other big news. Joe Biden officially declared that he is running for re-election. I admit I still had my doubts right up until his announcement. Something kind of interesting in the announcement itself is that it was released in the form of a short video in which, Biden emphasized the importance of democracy, which would seem to suggest that he's already planning to run against Donald Trump in the general election. Was that the impression you got too, Bernie?
Yes, and what if he doesn't? What if he doesn't? What if he runs against somebody younger? Well, everybody's younger, but somebody younger, somebody more energetic, somebody who knows what city he's in when he makes his comments and what country he's in. Then that hope that Biden has of running against Donald Trump won't come to pass. But in any event, most Americans don't want Joe Biden to run for re-election. Now, you hear that a lot on Fox, getting back to Fox, you hear that a lot. What you don't hear on Fox is that most people don't want Donald Trump to run for re-election either. So here we are with most Americans not wanting either of them to run, but they're both running and they're both leading the field. One has only token opposition, the other is light years ahead of his most likely second place opponent who hasn't even entered the race yet, the governor of Florida. One candidate isn't as sharp as voters would like him to be, I'm being kind. The other candidate is the only president in US history who tried to stay in power after he lost an election. This is not a rematch most voters want. Now, I'm writing a column about this that will be up on Monday. And I quote my former CBS News colleague, Peggy Noonan, who says, this time around, it's different. Voters don't want this rematch. And they're likely to get a little rebellious. You know, she said frisky, they're likely to get frisky and be a little rebellious. Well, what form does that take? Well, there's RFK Jr. He's got 19% of the vote. That's not nothing. Now, I don't think he's going to overtake Joe Biden, but he can cause Joe Biden problems. You want to know how? What if Joe Biden doesn't take part in a presidential debate? RFK Jr. says, what's he afraid of? And voters scratch their heads and say, yeah, that's a good question. What is he afraid of? The other possibility is the third party candidacy. That never goes well. But voters don't want either Biden or Trump to run, so there could be a third party candidate. And in the column I'm writing, I name one in particular who might have a shot of causing problems for both Democrats and Republicans. Poll just came out. 28% of people identify as Democrats. 27% identify as Republicans. More than 40% identify as independents. This could be a year. I'm not making a prediction. I'm saying, unlike other years, this could be a year for a third party run. And again,
Yeah, it's
name a particular candidate who might be the guy. And if he is the guy, he might do well.
okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to read that column. So, yeah, you mentioned that most people do not want this rematch. I think the polls actually show 5% of Americans want this rematch, 95% don't. So that's pretty stiff. Since you brought up Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I do have a question about that because this is people were surprised that he was polling about 20%. Do you think that many people even know who he is, or did they just see, maybe some Democrats are discontent with Biden? They see the Kennedy name and they're like, oh yeah, the Kennedy's got that iconic name, remained popular over all these years. How much of that do you think is name recognition?
Well, name recognition is a big deal. And so what? If that's why 19% voted for him, or a portion of that 19%, okay. I want to get back to what I said. I'm not saying he's going to overtake Joe Biden, the incumbent president, but I am saying he could cause Biden problems. I mean, RFK Jr. has some nutty ideas, okay? We don't have to go into a great deal of detail, but about vaccinations and about autism and all that, okay? But what if he is younger? He's a bright guy. What if voters start? He's not going to cause Biden problems in that he'll overtake Biden, but he could help the Republican candidate if voters say, this guy RFK Jr., I mean, he's sort of better than Biden. He seems more thoughtful. He can finish a sentence. He's a Kennedy, if that matters. That may get them not to vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but it may get them to vote against Joe Biden in favor of a Republican, even, this is important, even if that Republican is Donald J. Trump. Now, Biden's best shot is to run against Donald Trump. We all know that.
Right.
But if Biden stumbles between now and Election Day, if he forgets where he is, if he can't finish a sentence, even Donald Trump can beat him.
It's I would never say never. I think that's a good point. One thing I wrote about this at the tail end of last week too, having to do with Biden's presidency. I don't think he is at all helped. I mean, there's lots of things running against him while he's running for re-election. I don't think it helps that Kamala Harris is his vice president, and because a big reason is because if people are gonna put faith in Biden for another term, and I think the polls show that over 60% of voters think that he may not make it through a second term. And if he doesn't, we obviously know who would step in for him. And Harris is even less popular than he is. That seems like a big problem to me.
No, that's an understatement. It's a huge, as Donald Trump would say, it's a huge problem, because a vote for Joe Biden may in fact be a vote for Kamala Harris. Think about that. A vote for Joe Biden, in the minds of voters, a vote for Joe Biden might be a vote for Kamala Harris. Because if Joe Biden doesn't finish a second term, and I don't see, 86, he's not sharp now. Is he going to be sharper when he's 82 and 83 and 85 and 86? I don't think so. Nobody thinks so. If Kamala Harris is even less popular than Joe Biden, can anybody think of something important that she said since she's been vice president? I'll be quiet for a second or two. Raise your hand if you can think of something important that she said. Can you think of anything pertinent that she said about policy since she's been vice president? What is she best known for? That unprovoked cackle that pops up for no apparent reason. A vote for Joe Biden in the minds of the electorate may in fact be a vote for Kamala Harris, and that is not a plus for Joe Biden.
No, I totally agree. And we started this part off by mentioning that, it looks like Biden is definitely planning on running against Trump. And I think he has good reason to believe that's who he will be facing. Trump is actually increasing his lead in the polls, and that brings us to our last topic that we were going to mention. So Ron DeSantis, he was riding pretty high after his huge reelection win in Florida last year. His poll numbers were looking pretty good against Trump in the Republican primary, but they haven't looked as good in recent months. And I think that's due to first some political missteps on his part, and also a lot of unanswered attacks from Trump. Trump's been hammering him; he really hasn't been hitting back yet. And now, DeSantis is in the news because the Disney Corporation is suing him for allegedly using the power of the government down there in Florida to punish their company over sort of some woke political speech that DeSantis didn't like. And at the beginning of this battle, I think DeSantis felt he was sort of earning some good culture war cred. He was taking on the woke crowd, and Republican voters love that. But this Disney thing seems to have become a distraction, and now even Trump's mocking him over it. Nikki Haley is of course jumping on there, going after him as well. Do you think you think DeSantis is in trouble here, or do you think it's way too early to say that?
I think he's temporarily in trouble, but it is way too early. He can come out of it, and the way to come out of it is to stop fighting with Disney, even though Disney started the fight. Disney started the fight by getting involved in a piece of Florida legislation and mischaracterizing it as a don't say gay bill. That was never what it was about. It was about teaching kids in kindergarten through third grade about sexual matters, or not teaching them, okay? So even though Disney started it, Ron DeSantis can get out of this mess that he got himself into by simply talking about the Florida economy. People are leaving New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Illinois, even California, and moving to Florida because it's a more vibrant state. Talk about that. I mean, the woke thing is interesting. I think woke is getting out of hand. And I just wrote a column, as many of you know, about preferred pronouns and how homie the clown don't play that game. So I think woke is not a non-issue, but the economy is a bigger issue. And he has a lot going for him if he talks about the economy. He should do that and stop fighting with Disney.
No, I agree, and I think any talking about the economy is a very good thing. Talking about how his big victory last year is a big thing. And I think also, this is my personal take. I think any Republican candidate who is serious about actually winning the primary, and I think a lot of these people so far that are either have already declared or are going to soon aren't really serious about becoming president. And
Right.
but anyway, the ones that do, I think they need to start landing some punches too on Trump. They can't live forever in fear of the MAGA base. I think they have to take some chances, especially with how popular Trump is.
Well, let's talk about the people who are really running for vice president. What if Donald Trump wins the nomination and puts either Nikki Haley or Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina? What if he puts them on the ticket? Donald Trump isn't popular with moderate suburban voters. That may make him tenable to those voters. That may make him acceptable if he has somebody like a black senator from South Carolina or a woman also from South Carolina. So Donald Trump, I think they're running for vice president, frankly. I can't see either of them becoming the nominee. Anything could happen, but I don't see it. But I do think they could be named vice president. And I think both would accept the job. And I think that would make Donald Trump more acceptable. Now, there's one other thing about DeSantis. Early on, long before the primaries, I said abortion is going to be a bigger issue than people think. And I'm going to pat myself on the back and say I was right. Abortion is a bigger issue. And Ron DeSantis going along with the 6-week abortion ban in Florida. I understand the morality of people who are pro-life. I get it. I understand that they can't compromise if they think a human life is on the line. I understand that. But there are political consequences to making a decision to want to either ban abortion outright or even impose a 6-week ban. And I think part of the reason Ron DeSantis has lost some popularity is because of that abortion stance that he took.
It's possible. I feel like that is an issue that's not going to hurt someone as much in a Republican primary. I know that there is polling that show that the abortion issue is a little bit more nuanced within the party than people may realize. But I think that might come back in a general election, perhaps. But I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with that. That in a primary, it's going to be that much of a hindrance.
Well, his poll numbers are down, I assume, not among necessarily only Republican voters, but they're down in national polls. And am I right
I'm not
about
sure.
that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit. The most recent ones I've seen is that in the general election, he's still doing better than Biden, and Biden's still doing better than Trump. It's all very close. It's not that there's not that huge of a gap, but he does seem to be polling better nationally than Biden does.
My point is that a Republican who thinks he's going to win by appealing to the base on abortion, it's not a good strategy. It may be the moral thing to do in their mind. Again, I understand that, but it's not a good political strategy. It may not even, this is where I'm going to take issue with, not with your conclusion, but with the possibility that you're wrong. It may not even be a good strategy among Republican primary voters because a lot of Republican primary voters aren't for a 6-week ban on abortion either.
No, that's true. I'm not sure it'll be as much of it'll hurt him that much, but we'll see. To me, I think the biggest, thing that DeSantis has going for him is, he can go out there and say, in running against Trump, Donald, you tweet about being a winner and a fighter, but you couldn't even beat Joe Biden. You keep losing elections for us. I won my election by 20 points. I've racked up one win after another while you've been sitting at home whining every day on social media. And I think that's something he can say and get away with. I don't think MAGA world's going to turn on him for that because I think they do want to see sort of a fight there. Yeah, I think he's got a good case to make, and so far he seems a little shy about trying to make it.
The 20 or 25% of so-called MAGA voters who will never, ever abandon Trump will not vote for somebody who attacks Trump the way you just outlined. They won't do it. Now, if you're willing to lose those voters, but make up for that loss with moderate independent voters who don't like Trump and who have traditionally voted Republican until Donald Trump came along, then you lose on the one hand hardcore Trump supporters, but you gain on the other hand moderate suburban voters, especially women, who you lost in the 2 elections that Trump was a candidate in. Didn't matter in 2016, but it mattered in 2020. And if you get more of them than the Trump supporters that you lose, it's a good strategy. But sooner or later, somebody's going to have to take on Trump in a smart way, or otherwise, why not just vote for Trump?
Right, right. Yeah. One more thing I'll just hit on. I just sort of popped into my head. You brought up how you think Scott and Haley are probably running for vice president, and I tend to agree with that. Do you see the appeal after what happened with Mike Pence in someone wanting to be Donald Trump's vice president? I guess it's a launch pad for 4 years down the road. I can't think of any other reason to want to be that.
You see, this is your problem, John. You're being rational. Don't be rational. We're not talking about being rational. We're talking about politics. If you want to be president of the United States someday, being vice president is not the worst place to start your road. So if you're a senator from South Carolina, you say, if I can get on the ticket, I could make a name for myself. I could be known, my name will get known, and I could become the president in 4 years. And the same with Nikki Haley, who was a very successful governor of South Carolina. Now, rationally, you say, do I want to be associated with Donald Trump? If I do anything he doesn't like, he's liable to humiliate me in public. They're not worried about that. They are not worried about that at all, because they won't do anything to offend the orange guy in charge. I mean, they just won't do it. They're smart enough to know that if they accept the vice presidency, they have to play by his rules, which means kissing his rear end every chance they get.
Yeah. And Mike Pence did a pretty good job of that. He stood up, when it mattered on January 6th, and people wanted to hang him because of it. But yeah, no, he was very much a yes man, and it's interesting to see him sort of talk out now against Trump a little more than probably anybody else is doing right now who's running. But I don't think he has any chance, of course.
Well, Chris Christie is speaking out against Trump, and I don't know if he'll get in the race, but he spoke out against Trump early. Again, you could be a good candidate. You could say all the right things, but all the right things aren't all the right things to Trump supporters, not his most loyal supporters. You could say Donald Trump is a loser. He is. He's lost everything except 2016. He lost in 2018. He lost the presidency 2 years later. He lost the Senate a couple of months after that. He's largely responsible for the crummy showing in the midterms. He's a loser. say that and you're going to lose his most ardent supporters. That's the real danger here. Trump has created a loyal base of 25% roughly of people who will never abandon him. And they will hurt a Republican who goes after Trump. Again, will they hurt him enough compared to the number of moderates and independents and suburban women who will be attracted by that candidate, attracted to that candidate? It's a close call. But I think the best way to do it is you don't attack Trump in a nasty way. You make points about how we have to look to the future. We can't dwell on the past. We need a new generation. You try to be kind in your challenge of Donald Trump, but he won't see it that way, and he'll go after anybody who says anything that he deems an attack on him, even if it's a nuanced, decent, civil, quote unquote attack.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's one of those issues where I think someone's gonna have, and I think we probably differ a little bit on that. I think someone's gonna have to take that chance if they want to win, but we'll see. That's probably a good place to wrap things up. It was great talking to you today, Bernie. Just to our viewers, please let us know what you thought of this episode, maybe some topics you'd like us to discuss in the future. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Bernie?
Well, I keep asking our loyal patrons, subscribers, who I really appreciate, to tell their friends. Either they're not telling their friends or it's not sinking in. We want this to be a bigger forum, and I can't go out and do that on my own. I'm asking you as a favor, to John and me, to tell your friends and try to convince them to sign up and join the party.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So thank you, everybody. We always appreciate you. Thank you, Bernie. You have a great day. All right.
You too, John.
Thank you.